All right, so I'm not even a week into these vlogs, and I'm already a day late on one. I literally was just so busy and kind of stressed, to be honest, that I just forgot. So here it is. I'm gonna play catch up and still get all these in so that I can hit that 100 vlog mark because I feel really good if I did that. So I guess I'll talk about how I got into track days and motorsports in general. A little background on me won't hurt, right? So uh, go back. I went to Georgia Tech to study mechanical engineering because I knew I loved cars and I wanted to find a way to get into automotive. And at the time, I thought that meant being an engineer and taking that skill set um, directly to the workforce and using that as a way to get into cars. I knew I enjoyed technical things. I enjoyed precision mathematics, science, that kind of approach to things. Um, so I studied mechanical engineering, and I made some friends there that were also into cars. And at one point back in 2010, so this is 9 years ago, I got invited out to a track day. Of course, I didn't have a car, or I didn't have a car at the time. I had a little Ford Ranger, which would not be good for a track day. But really, we just rented Little Talladega, or TGPR, Talladega Grand Prix Raceway in Alabama. And I got to drive this modified WRX STI Subaru. And I went out there and I thought I had it all figured out. I mean, I was out running track prepped M3s, E36 M3s. I was like, man, okay, I'm made for this sport. Like, I'm just the fastest guy out here. This is awesome. It's so much fun. Um, and so I left and I was like, okay, this is something I have to get back into somehow. And I wasn't able to right away. You know, college kind of takes all your resources and time included. But after college, uh, 4 years later, I finally talked myself into getting into it. And the way I did is I picked up a 1993 Mazda Miata. Um, we had found this table at Caffeine and Octane that was talking about this HPDE, this track day organization that they had started up, and it was called Just Track It. And so I just got their rule book, figured out everything, and decided what I needed to do. After I had picked up this Miata, I just immediately put a roll bar in it, um, put a set of racing seats in there, and harnesses, and did that all up front before I showed up for my first track day. Pretty much didn't do anything else. Just had to make it pass because it's a convertible. But it was a 1993 Mazda Miata. Didn't really need much of anything. Wasn't terribly fast, but it was pretty fun. And so I took it out and went back to CGPR. I already knew the place. Just Track It had an event there. And so I went out and I proceeded to just, I mean, they didn't pay me to, but I might as well have been lawn care. I was out there just four wheels spinning through the grass like multiple times. Wow, my ego clearly had overtaken me because I was a mess. I was terrible at this. My parents were there to watch me totally fail, and it was all good. I still left having had a blast, but I felt like the car was really unpredictable and hard to drive because it had blown shocks. It was 200,000 mile old car, probably had, way too much time on the suspension. So I knew that had to be addressed. I picked up some coilovers. Just somebody had a new in-box set of Tane Street Advanced coilovers. So I picked those up and installed them. And it made a huge difference. But lo and behold, it didn't fix the fact that I don't know how to drive. And so my next event back out there, same thing. Just spun it like crazy. My parents are over here thinking like, man, you do not know what you're doing. This is probably not your sport. But I stuck with it. And I was getting active on the forums talking about how I was setting the car up and how I was like getting excited to get into this track day thing. And then I saw a really cool Miata at my work parking deck. And I took a picture of it and posted it on the forums. And turns out it was this guy Yancey, who runs with Jay Zilla Track Days. And I found him on the forums after posting up that picture, and he reached out to me. I was like, "Hey, you really got to check out these Jzilla guys." And so I went over and tried out a Jzilla track day, and I don't remember which one it was. It was probably Atlanta Motorsports Park, and had a blast. And so from then on, I just started rotating through all these events, and after a few of them, I started sharing the car with my dad. And thankfully, his first event was the same way. He went out at TGPR and he spun the car a ton of times and filled the whole interior with dirt and realized it's a little harder than it looks and maybe even a little more fun than it looks. And so that really kicked off the bug in him and as well. And so after a while, he decided the Miata wasn't for him. And so he picked up a BMW E36 that he still has to this day. Now, it looks very different now than when he picked it up. But he picked up one that was just a 94 BMW 325i stick shift, but otherwise just a granny car. I mean, not the car had never seen any kind of performance driving or anything like that. Then he proceeded to swap out all the suspension and everything, turn it into a proper car. And it gutted it, put a full cage in there, and went full race car with this thing. And even so, it's seen a lot of evolution even since that initial run through. So I stuck with the Miata pretty much in stock form, but coilovers, seats, and rollover protection for quite some time. I would have ran it almost forever. But unfortunately, after I made a bunch of changes at Road Atlanta, I ended up putting it in a wall, and it was pretty severe. Severe enough that it bent up the car and it wasn't really fixable. I held on to it for a while, hoping I could find another donor, swap everything over. I did buy another Miata immediately following there, 2 days after I had that accident. But that car really didn't do it for me. I fell in love with that 93 I had. The next one I picked up was okay, but I never fully converted it back to a track car, and so I started shopping for a track car. So I rotated through a few. I had a what did I get? I can't even remember. I had a 135i BMW. I wanted something kind of nice, and it was very fast, but it fell apart on track. And picked up a Honda S2000, which was a blast, and it was amazing on track, except for the fact that it kind of scared me. The suspension is pretty unforgiving. It really, like, it's like a whip. If you rotate the car, it just like snaps into position, which is very responsive. That's cool, but it's got this tendency to suddenly kick the rear end around, like if you go over a bump, and is as raw of a car, as special of a car as it was, it didn't get me excited that it was going to potentially ruin me. I mean, it was a beautiful car, and I just couldn't imagine putting it in a wall. So I decided I needed something else, and I picked up a Toyota 86, so a 2017 Toyota 86. And I was sold. I was like, man, this is the car. It's got room for me to like have people come along, because I had started constructing at this point. It'd be such a great car. It's really, really designed towards people that want to get the most out of a car and really enjoy driving and great driving characteristics. It has all of that. But unfortunately, not too long ago, I was pulling out of my apartment complex and got sideswiped, and that car's totaled. Now, I've not announced this publicly before because there was a lot involved, including a court date that just transpired. But yeah, it's, anything can happen, and thankfully nobody got hurt. But that's just life. So with that, I was positioned to maybe do something different, and I had a full note on the car. I owed $20,000 on the Toyota, which was a good price for the car, but it didn't change the fact that when I went on track, I was tracking a car that I still owed $20,000 on. Now, I did get track insurance, but it still kind of diminished some of the fun, knowing that this car has to get me home and to work, and I'm paying on it. So I figured it might make sense to go a little cheaper on the next car, and I found this 128, and I love it. I think it's a great platform, but really that's where the story ends because that brings you up to today. So there's a lot in those gaps, and I'll come back and talk about more of it another time. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. That's how I got into this crazy stuff, and um, it shows no signs of stopping. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.